Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire. Hello and welcome back to Into the Work, therapy for empaths and seekers. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we are talking about a pattern that so many empaths and sensitive women fall into. Something I call the fixer wound. It's the unconscious belief that your role in relationships is to help, heal, solve, or carry other people's problems, and that this is what makes you lovable. If that hits a nerve, you're not alone. In this episode, we are going to explore what the fixer role actually is, why empaths and sensitive women often confuse love with labor, the difficult emotions you're avoiding when you try to fix it, and most importantly, how to begin to heal the cycle so you can experience real, reciprocal, connected love. So let's dive in. What is the fixer wound? So the fixer wound is the unconscious belief that love equals being needed. It says, if I'm not solving something for you, I'm not valuable. You may feel responsible for your partner's moods, your friend's problems, your coworker's stress. Those are all triggers for you, really, and for you to want to jump in with advice, emotional support, or even overextend yourself financially or energetically just to help. But here's the truth. Fixing is not the same as loving. It's actually a defense mechanism, a coping strategy, often learned early in life. So if you grew up in a home, let's say, where you had to manage other people's emotions, where love was conditional or chaotic, then being the helpful one might have felt like the safest way to stay connected. Especially if you had a sibling that had a lot of issues, that got a lot of attention, that might have also been a way for you to be the star and to shine. And if there was one person, let's say, that had anger issues or a hard time regulating themselves emotionally in the family, that would also trigger this. Or even perhaps you grew up where there was a lot of conflict between your parents. Maybe you're a child of divorce. At some point, this became a way for coping. This became a way for being safe and for being loved and for getting your needs met. So it was really a beautiful thing at one point. But it isn't working anymore. And there are two triggers for the fixer wound that I want to highlight for you today. The first one is why sensitive women confuse love with labor. So empaths feel so deeply, right? As sensitive seekers, we feel very deeply, and we often merge emotionally with others. And when someone you love is in pain, it can feel unbearable. Like we can feel an incredible amount of emotional energy towards wanting to fix the situation and make it go away. But here's the deeper layer. Many empaths or many sensitive women have learned that love must be earned through effort. I mean, women in general have been taught this. Love must be earned through effort. It's not your fault. It's our culture, especially for women. They reinforce the idea that being selfless, helpful, nurturing, and accommodating makes you quote unquote good. But if your worth is built on being useful, then guess what? Stillness, rest, receiving can all feel unsafe. It can even feel shameful or embarrassing if you're caught resting or, being still or being called out for asking for your needs being met, when you're trying to receive. So you keep working, you keep fixing, you keep performing. And so that fuels it for you. So we have this idea that, love equals labor. That's how I get my value. That's how people want to keep me in relationship. They want to keep in relationship with me because I'm working harder. I'm working hardest. The other part of it is the emotions that you're avoiding when you fix. So let's talk about what's really going on underneath the surface when the urge to fix shows up. Often fixing is a way to avoid difficult, vulnerable emotions of your own. Like, for instance, anxiety. If I don't do something, something bad's going to happen. And so I have to fix this. Fear of abandonment. Like, if I don't help them, they're going to leave me. They're not going to see my value. They're going to be bored, whatever. Shame. If I'm not needed, I'm not enough. Even grief can come in. We can even experience like bouts of grief where we feel like I've never been taken care of the way I care for others. And it kind of fuels us to feel like because that's a truth and we've grieved it, then, and since it must be true since we grieve it, then we perpetuate it and keep it up. And another one is anger. When we're like, why am I always the one holding it all together? Right? We're indignant, we're resentful, we're frustrated. Why, nobody else does this. I got to take care of everything. And so that anger also is an emotion that's uncomfortable and we want to avoid by taking over and doing. And now these emotions are big. They can even be a little scary to us because they're uncomfortable. So instead of feeling them and being with them, you stay busy managing everybody else's emotional experiences. Instead of sitting there and saying, whoa, look at that. Look at that. I am angry. And I wonder if that's why I want to fix everything for them, because I don't like my own feelings here. They're really uncomfortable. I need them to get comfortable so that I can get comfortable. But avoiding these emotions only prolongs your suffering and it prevents real healing. So you're not really able to work on this if you don't pay attention to them and you don't acknowledge them. And there's an obvious cost to being the fixer, right? So you know this, but let's hash it out for a minute. There's a cost, and it's often accompanied by self-abandonment. I mean, that is the telltale sign of the overgiver, the overextender. The people pleaser in you is the self-abandonment piece. That happens a lot when we try to fix. But let's get honest about what this pattern costs you. First of all, emotional exhaustion and burnout is probably a friend of yours. One-sided relationships is very common for people who are rescuers and fixers because they get in these relationships where they overgive and then they start to lose touch with your own needs and desires, right? The resentment simmers under the surface, and then you lose touch with your own self because you're so focused outside of yourself. You're so focused in this one-sided relationship. And there's a lack of true intimacy because you're stuck in a role. You're not in your authentic self. And here's the hard truth. Fixers often attract people who expect to be fixed. And that's not a relationship. It's an energetic imbalance. And not to say it's not a relationship that you're in. It's obviously a relationship you're in, but it isn't the quality of the relationship that you want. It's actually an energetic imbalance. And so fixers often attract people who expect to be fixed. So let's talk about this dynamic a little deeper because it's a really big one and it's definitely in the forefront for you if you are a fixer in relationships. Because when you're constantly showing up as the fixer, always ready to help, problem solve, emotionally regulate other people, rescue them, what ends up happening is you unconsciously attract people who are comfortable being helped, but not necessarily being, they're not necessarily comfortable with healing, right? They're comfortable with being helped because being helped is very different from healing. Being helped puts the power in the other person's hands. Healing means taking responsibility. And so you rarely will see people who are in this dynamic, you'll see them constantly feeling like I'm the helper, they're the receiver, because that would mean they'd have to take responsibility, which is what this relationship provides for them that they don't have to. So this creates an energetic imbalance. You become the over-functioner and they become the under-functioner. And the relationship can sometimes become more about what you do versus who you are. And I see this a lot in relationships. I mean, if this is something you're resonating with, this is definitely something I see often where the more and more and more somebody overfunctions, the more and more it's like the scale tips. The other person starts underfunctioning, and their relationship completely changes. The scale gets just too off balance. These relationships maybe it felt intense at first, deep conversations, emotional vulnerability, maybe even trauma bonding. But over time, you begin to notice you're always giving more than you're receiving. You're the emotional anchor, but no one is anchoring you. And you're exhausted, but they seem to rely on your energy just to stay afloat. So that's the dynamic, right? You can see this at work too, like just the way you've carved out relationships at work. You can be getting more and more exhausted and depleted, but they seem to just completely rely on your energy in order to stay afloat. So you're not allowed to be exhausted, right? You're not allowed to check out because they don't know how to stay afloat without you. That's not the agreement here, right? That's not the manual they were given when you first met and you put this relationship together. It was that, this is what you're going to do and this is the role I'm going to play. And I've also found that also over time in these relationships, a lot of times the conversations shift, right? Because you're into that place where you're kind of playing a role and the relationship becomes less about who you are and more about what you do, then the quality of the conversation can sometimes, not always, but can sometimes change to this surface level stuff, like you're doing this, I'm doing that, because that person is not, again, being the emotional anchor for you, not creating the space for you. And so those deep conversations, they might be you, offering that to them, but you're not receiving that anymore. So the quality feels less and less. And here's the hardest part. When your identity is tied to being the fixer, this dynamic can feel familiar, even comfortable. You may confuse it for love because it mirrors what love looked like growing up. Here's what I mean. True intimacy, real soul-nourishing connection requires reciprocity, and that's what's hard. It requires both people to take emotional responsibility for their own healing. So when you're always the one fixing, you're not actually in relationship, right? You're not in what we're talking about here. We're not in relationship, in intimacy, in, vulnerability and sharing and reciprocity. And you're in a role and you're doing all the emotional labor and you're managing the connection versus experiencing it. I'm going to say that again. You're actually managing the connection, making it happen, instead of just being able to sit back and experience it. And the truth is you deserve to really be seen and experienced in your wholeness, not just your helpfulness. And that would be your goal, is to step into your wholeness, share it, and start to change the game. And it's not about your helpfulness anymore. Now, let's talk about applying this fixer pattern to parenting. This dynamic doesn't just show up in a romantic relationship or friendships or work. It definitely shows up in parenting. I'm sure you've actually even thought of this when we were talking about this, because it's such a common thing for us sensitive folks to like really find ourselves kind of lost in. Because if you carry the fixer wound, you probably find yourself stepping in to prevent your child from ever feeling discomfort. That's just really difficult to tolerate. Or perhaps you find yourself fixing problems for them before they even try. Perhaps, you're absorbing their emotional struggles as your own, feeling responsibility for their mood, for their success, for their self-worth. And well, of course, as parents, we can definitely feel like, well, of course, I want to build their self-worth. But I'm talking about fixing and resolving and taking over instead of allowing them to go through the process that builds their self-worth, which is to learn for themselves. And becoming over-involved in school, friendships, or emotional decisions, while it comes from a place of love and protection, here's the danger. When we constantly fix for our kids, we rob them of the opportunity to build resilience, confidence, and trust in their own abilities. They may start to believe things like, I can't handle hard things without mom. Or perhaps someone else always knows better than me, so they always want to ask somebody else. Maybe they feel that my feelings are too big and I need someone else to manage them. Over time, this leads to learned helplessness and lack of emotional regulation skills, people pleasing. Well, we're breeding new people pleasers, right? And perfectionists and emotional dependence. And you might even see yourself in your child, the sensitive one, the helper, the one who feels too much. But here is the reframe. You don't have to fix everything for them to be a good parent. In fact, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is witness their experience. Stay grounded. Let them know this is hard. I believe in you. I'm here with you, but I trust you. You can move through this. That is how they learn inner strength. Just saying, this is hard. I believe in you. I'm here with you, but I trust you can move through this. That is how you raise empowered, emotionally intelligent humans without losing yourself in the process. Now, I say this with total transparency that I was not doing this. I mean, I did this well sometimes, right? I did this well sometimes. And then a lot of times I didn't. I had so many things that I felt I had to fix for my kids growing up. I constantly was the fixer and rescuer. And I married somebody who was very much the same thing. And so between the two of us, our kids didn't even learn how to make a grilled cheese until they were like 14, right? Our focus attention was always on fixing things for them, doing things for them so that they did not have to screw up, get hurt, do the wrong thing, make a mistake. And so while I knew this, I could have written a book about this, 12 years ago when I had littles, but I still found it difficult to implement because I had a very strong urge because that's what was done for me when I was little, right? And so I had this very strong urge to take over and to do and to fix. And that's what being a good mom was. Even though I had this other logical brain that knew, yeah, I need to let them fall down. Yeah, it's really important they cry and they have their emotions and I don't interfere and try to control them. I knew all these things. I'm a therapist, right? So I know I had resources, but I'm telling you and sharing with you, even then still, this is the force is strong within us, guys. Like this fixer pattern, this rescuer is strong and it comes through even when you think you're doing a really good job. It's like, oh yeah, but there it is. So how do we stop this? How do we begin to heal the fixer pattern? How do you let go of labor as a love language, right? How do you let go of labor as a love language? How do you stop doing that? How do you stop that connection? Well, here's what it looks like. For starters, is awareness. You cannot fix anything you're not paying attention to. So you need to start noticing the urge to fix. What's happening in your body, right? What story is coming up? And then pause before acting. So let's sit with this for a second. I want you to notice the urge to fix, and you're going to feel it. It's going to happen like tomorrow, okay? And you're going to start to feel it in your body. I want you to notice, with curiosity, where am I feeling that in my body? Is that in my chest? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your throat? Where is it? And what's the story coming up? So you're feeling the urge, and then there's a story. I have to because, right? What follows that? I used to be obsessed about my kids' water. I mean, I was like the water police. Do you have water? Do you have water? Always trying to get them water. And then I also became obsessed about them having ice in their water, especially in the summer heat. Like they needed to have ice in their water. If they played sports, there had to be a lot of ice. And so to this day, one of my kids, my son, is now 16, and he's like, I don't want to have another ice cube a day. He has no interest in cold water. But in my head, like it was what was important. I had a story that this had to happen, and I had to make sure it happened, or it wasn't going to be safe, wasn't going to be okay. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now that I don't want to feel? This alone can unlock massive insight. What am I feeling right now that I don't want to feel? Sit with it. Take a moment and just say, what is this emotion for me? What don't I like about it? And that urge is in your body, that emotion is stirring. And I want you just to recognize, what don't I want to feel? This is what you're avoiding. This is what's happening, right? Is this very thing here that's coming up for you is why you're fixing. It's making you uncomfortable. And so you want to fix in order for your own discomfort to be solved. But instead, I want you to lean into it and really ask, what is that? What feeling right now that I don't want to feel? And so you can really bring in some insight with this process and really allow others to be in their process. You don't need to save them. People grow when they struggle. It's not your job to carry it all. And then reparent your inner fixer. The part of you learned loves means doing is still trying to stay safe. Offer her the compassion she's always given others. Take a moment to just sit with yourself and just say, whoa, there it is. I see you. You're doing that again, and it's okay. You're valuable without doing, right? You matter without doing. And set boundaries around your energy. Just because you can help doesn't mean you should help. Boundaries don't block love, they protect it. And so you need to really show up for boundaries with yourself and boundaries with others to what you're going to allow. Just because you can does not mean you should. And a lot of times it comes from a compulsion. Whenever you say, I have to because no one else will, or anytime you feel like I have to, then you have to check yourself. Is that really more of a compulsive thing for you that you are playing out? And therefore you're not having a boundary and you really need one. It's going to feel so much better. Love is not overextending. So maybe also redefine love. Maybe get back in your head about it and say, what do I want love to be? Love can be witnessing. Love can be presence. Love can be silence, and it can be stillness. And here's a couple of prompts I want you just to sit with. You can reflect on, you can meditate on, you can journal. But I want you to ask yourself, when do I feel most responsible for others? Pay attention, because this could be your sticking point. This could be where you feel, maybe it's like, oh, really, I get really big in this urge when I think there's danger, I perceive danger. And that's the big stuff. Or maybe it's like the little tiny stuff. I want you to notice all of it. With curiosity, I actually notice that this comes up for me. I want to control little things, that they're not big, there's no danger, right? I got a story going in my head and I just want to fix the way things are going because I think they're going to be better if they do things this way. What uncomfortable emotion am I trying to avoid when I go into fix-it mode? Kind of similar to what we just said. What is the uncomfortable thing I'm trying to avoid? And where did I first learn that love must be earned? Where did I learn that in order to feel safe in love, that I have to be working hard, that I have to be improving my value? Did that something that came up with your parents? Is that something you watched? Was it something you were told? And just sit with that. And what would it feel like to be loved for being, not doing? And I want you to take a moment with that, because for those of you that are true fixers, this may be something you're even saying, I don't even know, Michelle. I really don't. I don't even know, because I've never done it. I've never just been loved for being, not in my world, not in my head, not how I perceive things. So that's okay. I want you to take this time to use your imagination. I want you to explore what you think it would feel like to be loved for being, not doing. How could you receive that? What would that be like for you? How would it feel? What would it look like? Because I think this is actually very important, because it'll allow you to recognize it when it's happening. Because it might even already be happening in some level of increments, right? This might already be happening, but you're not even noticing it, right? Because you're so in your lane as fixer. And so I want you just to think, use your imagination. What would you like it to be like? What could it feel like? What would it be like? And so you can recognize it when it's happening. All right. So until next time, I want you to remember that you are not here to carry everyone. That's not really why you came down here. You are here to come home to yourself. You are here to become the most you can possibly be. You don't need to be the strong one. You don't have to be the capable one all the time, or the helpful one, or the fixer to be worthy of love. Let others meet you. Let yourself receive, and let love be equal. Sometimes it really is just letting that happen. Stop managing it. Start experiencing it. Maybe this will actually breathe life into your relationship for you to let go of the reins. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone else who you know is tired of carrying it all. And if you're ready to take this work deeper, check out my course and group coaching program, the Modern Empaths Boundary Mastery, where we are healing patterns like these at the root and begin to reprogram our thoughts and emotions to sustain higher levels of happiness and joy in our day-to-day. This program will be open for early sign-up this summer. Link to learn more in the show notes. Until next time, take good care of you, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers, until next time.